get that all the time.
Hey guys, Savage Joy here with Real Progressives. Tonight I am actually joined by Mr. Ryan Ross. He comes from Broward County, Florida. As you guys know, I always do, congressional candidates, Senate, House, governor, all those fun things. But Ryan really stood out to me. And thank you, Ash, if you're watching. Thank you for the recommendation. So Ryan is actually running for Broward County, Florida Commission in District 2. Now, if that name doesn't sound familiar to you, yes, it is where Parkland happened, but it's also where Debbie Wasserman Schill and her posse hang out. So if that doesn't worry you as a candidate, I don't know what would. Ryan has actually been campaigning for over 2 years now, you said, which is incredible. So Ryan, starting out, what is the thing that actually solidified you wanting to run? Because, I should state that he is a public school teacher. So kind of a little far from a politician. So what was it that convinced you to go this route?
Yeah. First, thank you so much for having me on the show. It means the world to me. I love anytime you get an opportunity to talk about sort of progressive policy and what we're trying to do here in Broward County. That's a great question as far as what sort of led me to run. I think first I have to give credit where it's due. I was working for a state university at the time, and I had this amazing friend / assistant, and he said to me, it was right before the 2016 primary, and he starts telling me about Tim Canova's campaign. And I was so inspired by the issues that I constantly saw, forget the corruption and all of the things that surround Debbie Wasserman Schultz and the party. I love the kind of campaign that I saw Tim Canova do. And I watched that for a little bit, and I said, well, what if we did that on a local level? I mean, who's calling right now for those kinds of things on a local level? I love these men and women who are jumping into races at the congressional level, and they're doing amazing things. But unfortunately, they're not all Ocasios, right? They're not all taken down the win. And it seems like a missed opportunity to really do this at the local grassroots level and build a strong base. And so I had some things go on personally, and I became a single dad sort of overnight, and we moved to Coconut Creek, which is in Broward County. And I asked my 2-year-old at the time, and I said, what do you think about your dad trying to help people a different way? No longer in an administrative role, not in public education as much. What do you think about doing something different? And she was really excited. She sort of quipped back, Dad, if you can handle the parks, you can do anything. And I told her, commissioners do parks, baby. And so from there, that's when we started. I actually declared about a week later after getting the go-ahead, and we knew it's what we were going to do. We transitioned out of that job, and we've been at it since. So,
I digress, but my gosh, I don't like the way you love your daughter. It is the most amazing thing. Like your pictures with her, it is so beautiful and so sweet. And just the way you talk about her, like, oh my God, it is adorable. You're good. You're an awesome dad. Like, you could just tell.
I wish I could take more credit from it. Her comportment and disposition are sort of unparalleled, and I'm really, really just a fortunate father. I can honestly tell you, I wish it was more difficult than it is. In fact, today, a few hours ago, I'm sort of wincing right now because I broke my thumb at a indoor playground. A little girl was falling off of a slide, and I raced up to try to catch this kid because the parent was sort of further away, and I smashed my hand right into something on the playground. And she kind of came down and she ran up and she's like, Dad, that's going to take 2 kisses. And I tried to take it on the chin because the mom was like, thank you so much. Are you okay? And I'm like, Oh yeah, with my other thumb, yeah. She walked around the whole playground with me, just holding my thumb and making sure nobody bumped into it.
Oh,
I'm the most fortunate person in the world. But I thank you for bringing her up. I will say one quick thing. 2 years ago, so we had never done any type of like having pictures of her or anything, and I really committed early on. And then when I realized how involved these races are, how personal they are, there's no separation of private life and public life when you get to a certain point. And so I just committed, and I said, I'm going to be the kind of dad that I am with her. We'll snap pictures when we do, and if they get up there, they get up there. And people have really taken to that. I think being a father is a unique part of this campaign, right? I'm a person that really cares about my kid and other kids, and I'm fortunate to recognize the kinds of struggles that people have. And I try not to exploit it, but I like I said, I got an easy child.
No, it's so genuine. There's definitely no exploitation. Like, it is so sweet. I was just like, it felt like such a girl. I was just like, oh, like it's very sweet. And something else I noticed when I was researching your page, your actual candidate page, something I've interviewed over 90 candidates from across the country, and I don't think I've ever seen this. But on your actual campaign Facebook, not even a personal one, instead of asking for donations, you have a post for campaign contributions. You have a post for a woman's GoFundMe. And it just took me back. And I was like, this is this guy's campaign page. And he's asking for help for it. Just, I don't know, to you might not have even thought of it, but to me, since I've seen so many campaign pages, it just really stuck out to me.
That means the world. I can say that when we got into this, we knew that this was a winnable race. We knew we would have obstacles and challenges, of course, but I committed early to saying that what we wanted to be about as a campaign, as a platform, was about raising the voices of sort of the powerless and the marginalized and the voiceless. And you can't do that genuinely and authentically if it's not everywhere you want to say something. And so if there's a place where I want to say something and I want people to read it, I also want them to know that we're just as committed to raising the voices of other people. And we hope we've done that well. And I think it's critical for any future politician to be accountable, in those areas also. So we want to be able to be called out and respond to those things. I also have a section on the donations tab on the website, and it says if you at any point, if you start to think that your positions or views don't align with ours as a campaign, message me and I'll give the money back. And we actually, I reached out. Have never been asked yet to give the money back, but I saw some concerning posts from another person, and I knew that they had donated to the campaign, and we went right in and gave them their money back, and we said, thank you so much. I hope you'll still follow us along, and if you vote for my opponent, we want you to vote your conscience, but come see me when this is over so we can find a way to help you and your family and do whatever we can. So we want to be committed to those principles from the get-go. These campaigns can't get defined by people after they're in office.
Yeah, absolutely. How many people, well, you are running as a Dem. How many other Dems are you going up against? And how do you differentiate, what is, what makes your platform stand out?
Well, so I'll say, interestingly, there's 3 Democrats in the race, myself included. The first is the incumbent, the person, that I'm running against. And then there's a write-in candidate. And I don't know if you're very familiar with how write-in candidates are employed in Florida, specifically in Broward County. It's just a measure to disenfranchise any other voter other than Democrat. So when we got into the campaign, we wanted to be about just allowing people to get a chance to vote. They haven't had an opportunity to vote in over a decade. Republicans, independents, and, MPAs, Greens, anything, have not voted in a very, very long time. And that's been because either unopposed candidates or write-in loopholes. So we said we want to open that up, stop the write-in loophole. And so we have one who declared. We're currently actually filing to get that person disqualified because they falsified some candidate qualifying forms. And once we disqualify that person, it will allow Republicans and independents to vote. And I think that's just a part of being a healthy democracy, right? I mean, if you cannot be afraid of the person's opinions that you represent. And, unfortunately, we called this out for 2 years, asking my opponent not to engage the write-in loophole. And they did. And, that write-in, regrettably for them, they made some mistakes on their form. So he's a registered Dem, the write-in, and then my incumbent, who currently has the seat, he's a Democrat as well. And I think what differentiates us is just a commitment to what the people are saying on the ground. And that's what we haven't had for 4 years. I mean, nobody knows his name, right, until he sends you a letter of cease and desist to stop talking about him. And that's what we saw right up front. Nobody knew who he was, and that was a concern because a lot of these politicians at the local level, they operate in the shadows. It's great for them because when they do something wrong or something controversial, you don't even know who they are. And then you never see anybody else on the ballot, and only a limited pool of people can actually vote. And so it tends to maintain that establishment status quo. And we knew from the get-go that we were going to have to fight against that and then work really hard on the back end to make sure that we allowed more voting opportunities. So one thing that differentiates us right off the bat is that we want everyone to vote. We want not only all registered people to vote, but then we want to fight really, really hard for the second chance, say yes, second chance amendment and try to restore felon voting rights and really get everybody to exercise those civil rights. I mean, if you want to boost up these 5, 10, 15% turnouts, part of it is by allowing everybody to vote. And then the other part is working on the ground really hard and giving them a reason to. And so that's what we've tried to do. We've tried to say, hey, we have a platform that I don't think is so Democrat or so Republican. It's just about finding ways to support those people in our communities that are being forgotten, and also looking at the bigger scale picture and saying, how do we do things that are sustainable for the future, like energy independence, right? Or tuition-free state college or trade school. How do we do those things that are going to have a long-term positive benefit, more so than trying to court Amazon to Broward County, right, where they have terrible, terrible working conditions for the richest person in the world. And I don't even want to say that that person doesn't have the right to make their money. I just want to say I don't want them in my county when I'm working at trying to make sure that we have affordable housing, that we have sentencing reform and criminal justice. We don't have time to be trying to give tax benefits to Amazon or anything else that they're trying to bring here.
Absolutely. As far as the write-in candidate, I'm not saying you necessarily have proof, but do you think maybe they were kind of sent in as a spoiler on purpose?
Oh, absolutely. I would, in fact, go so far as to give a small anecdote. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but on the day of qualifying, you have to draw a campaign check off of your campaign account. It's sort of a statute. So I went in to deposit money into the campaign account to then go write a check over in the supervisor of elections office. And when I got there, my bank account had been hacked, and they couldn't give me. Bless you, the sneeze. Sorry.
Sorry.
So the account had been hacked. They said that they don't understand what happened. It looks like it was closed 2 months before it was opened over 2 years ago. So we knew something bad happened, and we had about an hour and a half before qualifying deadline, and I still had to drive to Fort Lauderdale. So we had them on the fly, put together another campaign account real fast, and when we went down there, the chair of the Broward Democratic Party was sitting there with just watching to see if I qualified on time. And then when someone said, what are you doing? He actually said she's seeing if any write-ins come in. So, I don't want to say that write-ins can't do that process. It's the law right now. I'm saying I want to change the law. And where I can, I want to make sure we have as high a voter turnout and we enfranchise as many people as possible. So I knew when the party chair was sitting there waiting to see if I qualified, which I did by 40 seconds because of the issue. It was crazy. 11:59, 20 seconds. They said, Ryan Ross, you are now qualified on the ballot. And that person kind of just, got up and left. The supervisor of elections came out to sort of shake my hand. and you know that these things happen, and they don't deny it if you ask them. They just don't want to talk about it.
Well, the supervisor of elections, is that not the woman who admitted to destroying all of Tim Canova's ballots?
On record, right? I mean, this is the kind of thing that you're up against. This is the same Broward County, it's my race, our SOE. You have to just call it, the way it is. And the reality is, this person, there should be no confidence, right, in what she's doing. If she doesn't know what she's signing, and she doesn't know what's being destroyed, that she, things for which she's responsible, and the stakes can't be higher, right? I was out knocking doors for Canova's campaign. I think it was a few weeks ago, and I was sort of listening to kind of maybe where their campaign is at and seeing what they were doing, and I kind of think my job is to be on the ground knocking doors for as many people as possible. And I was hearing a little update from what was going on, and honestly, I just think he gets short shrift a lot because he has such a graceful way of describing, I think, such monumental obstacles that are placed over him. It's almost like a catch-22, right? If he talks about it, it's, how do you not trust our elections? And if you don't talk about it, people are like, why aren't you calling this out, right? So I think he strikes a really good balance. But what I've seen is there's no accountability in that SOE office. Right? I mean, when you do that and it's on the books, why isn't somebody calling? We have Republican leadership throughout the state. Why isn't somebody calling, for her office? It doesn't make any sense to me. The ones I get are the sheriff and the superintendent, because maybe it takes a little bit of work to get there. We have her admitting it. And, I always knew we were going to be up to some crazy things along the way. I was shocked to see what we've encountered, but it's disgraceful.
It is. I could not. The fact that she admitted it just so nonchalantly, I could not believe it. Usually, people who are that corrupt don't do that.
What's wild to me is the silence, right? I mean, I think so much of the media wants to paint themselves as objective, dispassionate, disinterested. And when it comes to actually reporting on the local issues, it doesn't happen. And they put out a fluff piece here or some yellow journalism there. And you go, where's the strong write-up? Where's the call for action? Where's everybody sort of, cooperatively and collaboratively working together, to call on this person's exit? And it's not a Democrat-Republican thing. It's an election integrity issue. And that's what we're doing right now, filing against the write-in. I mean, I hate this practice. It's despicable. But what we need to do is call attention to this. This is attacking the foundations of our election integrity. And it becomes hard for people to want to go vote because you're already fighting the people that say, does my vote really matter? And we have to honestly sometimes concede. Right now, it doesn't. But we're working towards it. We're working towards getting it to matter. And when you come out in higher numbers, it's more difficult to do these kinds of things. But it's shameful. It's a shameful practice. And, there's no good word or good spin to put on that. It's a disgusting practice, period.
It is. And I love that you have, voter reform on your website. It really frustrates me when I interview candidates and they don't have that there, especially when they're saying, Bernie inspires them and stuff. I'm like, why would you not have that on there? Like, that's why we don't have him, in the White House. Like, so that's like the first thing I look for. I'm in Pennsylvania. We have close primaries. So, I feel you. I totally get it. And something that doesn't get talked about enough is how we need to change such things. You're right. Like open primaries, paper ballots, like we need these things.
Paper ballots is just such a basic common sense thing to do. You have to wonder why it's not being done. You have these senators who are introducing these elaborate bills that focus on all this stuff, and you're going, paper ballots. You know what I mean? No system is perfect, but that's a pretty good start. And I'd always start with better before nothing. So paper ballots is a start. We tried to come at this from two angles. One was the write-in loophole, which is really, really big in Florida. and the other one's open primaries. And we've taken on a lot of heat for the open primaries, especially being a Democrat. We had this whole debate over, Dem exit or Dem enter. What's the bet? Do you reform the party? Do you leave the party? And I've tried to say that, I'm going to fight to make sure we expand voting rights as much as possible in any position I'm in. So if you give me a megaphone, we're calling attention to injustice. That's one of them, right? I mean, that's a form of injustice that just needs to be taken seriously, even from Democrats. And that's what concerns me the most. With the write-in loophole, it's effectively closing out a primary for people that would never have a general. And so we've tried to say, I think in my campaign, that while I support open primaries, I'd like to start with write-in loophole. Let's first make sure everyone can vote when they otherwise would not be able to. And then let's move to see, how we implement open primaries. And I'm a supporter, but I can tell you, I'm also, very, very supportive of ranked choice voting. So I think there's a lot of ways we can do it. And I'm open to putting them all on the table. But first, I want to make sure that when somebody won't have an opportunity to vote for their elected representative, they always get an opportunity to vote for their elected representative. And that's different than open primaries, right? That's a starting point. And when you have more people voting, we can then talk about, who's messing with whose party election. You know what I mean? I mean, that's just, there's no reason to talk about the shenanigans that may potentially happen if you open primaries when we're deliberately closing them on people that don't have another choice to vote.
Right. Melissa Aguilar, I hope I didn't say that incorrectly, a viewer, she stated that close primaries are designed to keep the duopoly in power, and that is so on point. It's definitely by design.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
I would say absolutely. I would go a step further and say that, one, I don't know why people are even defending a two-party system if they can already recognize that independents are outpacing both of these parties. So we already know we have a crisis in our democratic system as it stands, which we need to be working to address. I don't think it's wise to say that the solution is telling them, well, pick one. So which one do you want to be? You want to be the R or you want to be the D? And I think that's the start. But, I think once you open up a primary and you give more people an opportunity to exercise those rights, then you start to see what kind of candidates they want to elect. And, we have a process to remove candidates. It's known as voting them out on election cycles. And I think that's the way we should start at this thing is really stop, with the whole two-party dynamic and say, let's just make sure we get the best person to do the best job. And when they fail, we hold them accountable. And when they succeed, you know what I mean? We speak about it glowingly.
This is one of the times when I get frustrated that I don't live where my candidates do, because I'm really feeling like I want to vote for you right now. So it gets really frustrating.
It's illegal, and I would be the first to call it out. So I ask you, don't make any.
No, and what's funny? You're talking about Tim Canova. He was actually my first guest, believe it or not. He had no idea. I had never interviewed anyone in my entire life. But I guess I was kind of good at selling myself, and he came on, which is just bizarre because he's so awesome. But I digress. So you kind of loosely mentioned the cease and desist letter. So it kind of sounded like a joke in a way to people who might not know. Yeah. But Ryan literally was served a cease and desist letter by his opponent. Do you want to, I don't know how much you can say for legal purposes or what have you, but can you just kind of touch on whatever you're able to say?
Yeah, absolutely. First, the first reaction, I'm a pretty, easygoing person, and anybody that knows me knows it. I mean, it's really hard to rile me up about anything. And, so the first response was just a little bit of shock and awe. Like, how does an elected official do something so obviously designed to silence, a political opponent? And then the fact that they go and they talk about how terrible it is that that Trump may do this for the media or whatever. So there was that kind of like baseline feeling of hypocrisy. But then it went right to, as an historian, you look at these cases like NYT v. Sullivan, stuff like that, where the threshold, over the First Amendment is going to be so high, for my opponent to prove that I did something wittingly and knowingly false and all these other elements, right? So there was that. But I'd say on another level, we just know that the truth is the best defense, right? And when you're at a point in your life when you can't speak about the truth freely and plainly, you're in a bad position. And I don't really take any intentional recognition for somebody that's going to silence the truth. And we knew what we were calling attention to was in fact damaging to his business, which is in fact what we would hope, because my opponent has been using a business to take money from senior citizens through association fees, through insurance money inside of association fees and association budgets. And so when we started calling attention to this, we knew that there was something wrong here, and we didn't care if there was an ethical opinion on it, or if the county had weighed in already. We just said, hey, these are seniors on fixed incomes. While we're screaming for senior homestead exemption, for their taxes, to say we need to lower the income requirement from 65 to 55, and then we need to take the 29,000 and change income threshold and bump it up to 40,000 so that more seniors qualify for these tax savings. He's over there literally taking money directly from their pocketbooks and their bank accounts. And we're like, I don't understand. Well, he gets honored in these senior communities because he's the attorney of record for the condo association, but he's also the one, having them choose his insurance company and then taking hundreds of thousands in commission fees. And we said, look, first of all, there's no way he could ever prove that I'm knowingly saying something false. But the reality is, when he says it's hurting his business, I hope it does. I hope it hurts every condo association that he goes to, because if we're going to sit here and fight for their right to save some money, because income inequality is at all-time highs no matter where you are, we want to at least make sure our seniors, can afford to live. It's a deplorable practice. And I don't think there is a lawsuit he could design with language restrictive enough to get us to stop, kind of speaking truth to power with that. I mean, it's disgusting. And I'll call on the FBI, the IG, the state attorney, our Broward attorneys. I won't stop. I won't let up on it, because you can't do that. And somebody has to. And what's he going to do? So he's going to slap me with litigation. I'm going to go to court and I'm going to argue that, I'm sorry that you don't like the First Amendment. I also don't like you taking advantage of seniors. So we'll see how it goes. But I try to be open about what we're doing and very transparent. I think that's the only way you can run a campaign that people can get behind. Because I think when you're honest and accountable, right, just baseline honesty and accountability, even when someone disagrees with you, they say that person, they'll own their mistakes when they make them, and they'll move forward. And I think people can get behind that in ways that are different than trying to find their perfect candidate, right? Because I'm nobody's perfect candidate, and we ask all the time, if someone's better, come on up. I'll support you financially, on the ground, emotionally. I'll tweet your social media. I'll work for you for free. But we haven't gotten anybody, and so it's just me here in this race, and we're excited to keep moving forward on it.
That's exactly what I tell viewers who complain about my guests and stuff. I say, look, the only time you're going to agree with a candidate 100% of the time is if you are that candidate. So if you're looking for some kind of purity test where you agree with everyone, you better get off your ass and run yourself. That's the only option you have, honestly. So you're, as I stated, you are a history teacher in a public school. And on your platform, of course, you do have teacher pay, which is ridiculous. Oh my God, it's absurd. And you actually you touched on it a little bit, that should you win this position, you will give $50,000 of your salary to help pay for high school graduates in the opportunity to go to college. Now, you had a few stats on your website. Is it less than 80% graduate?
No, so what we're trying to show there is that you have a less, so roughly around 78, 79% are graduating, and there's this really large window of economically disadvantaged students, at-risk students, and there's a couple candidates, one in particular that I'm fond of. He calls a lot of attention to the homelessness that's so pervasive amongst a lot of these students that really gets almost no attention. This is around the nation, not even in Broward County. And what we're trying to say is we see this window here. We see this huge gap, about 20, 21%. And we need to find a way to make sure that they know from the moment they enter high school, they will get to go to college or trade school, at least for 2 years, debt-free. And they're not going to get stuck with this sort of crippling debt that goes with them for the next 20, 30 years, prevents them from getting a mortgage on a house or doing anything meaningful. So we try to cover that gap, but we're really saying in terms of teacher pay, this is an undercovered issue as well. Like, everyone kind of knows teachers complain about their pay, and I think that's fair. And I'm not, as a teacher, I didn't come into the job necessarily looking to become a teacher. I had different motivations for entering into this position with the county as a history teacher. But what I noticed immediately was that these teachers are legitimately working 2 and 3 jobs. The summer is not free time for them, right? They're out there working that second job, trying to make money. And it's, I'm not the guy that ever says $45,000 or $40,000. I think starting it's about 40, 41, depending if you have a master's degree. So I'm not the person who ever says this isn't good money. But I will say that it's likely not enough money. And I think we need to do something about that. And we got some great Democratic candidates for governor that have called some attention to this issue recently. We hope to get more attention at the local level. I think there's a lot more we can do. I mean, honestly, when you have a voting block, when you have a constituency, you can leverage that block to any legislator for your area. So if you say, well, they're not introducing anything, that's because they don't know that if they don't, they could be voted out next term. And that's why we value grassroots so much, right? It's more than just propping me up for however long I'm in office for, which I hope isn't that long. But what it's more about is sort of leveraging those blocks and those constituents and bases to be able to say, when you want something, I can then take that to your legislator in the House or in the state Senate, and they're going to know that if they don't do it, there are consequences for those actions. And they're going to know, and we're going to keep building those strong bases to say, you have to do what we ask. You have to. And they have not operated on any level with some degree or modicum of accountability, because they know that whether or not they do it, they have their large PAC money donors that come in, special interest, and they're able to prop them up, and they can run their campaigns in the shadows and just blasting their name on everything right before an election. And it's the only person you know. And then it's the local, party bases that will weed out the progressives or the new insurgents that kind of come up through the ranks and have a small base. They know how to put the obstacles in their way, make it difficult, don't give them the endorsements, no attention, the media will drown them out. And before you know it, you're left with the same people every single time. So I think teacher pay is crucial. That's not to say that I don't think that they're getting paid, money that's, I think, at least commensurate with other, professions that do similarly, but it's just plainly not enough. And we want to make sure we do more to it. And we're going to do that with every issue. I mean, we started with the things that we thought were more valuable. We thought that getting our students to know that they had college waiting for them, because the kids that I teach, they don't even think about college. They don't have moms and dads to come home to. I told a friend the other day that I have kids that will stay late to talk, and they will talk to me, the subject of which is illegal things they're doing, right? And they're saying it just because they need somebody to talk to. They're actually doing those things, and you have to report them afterward. But the problem is they just want somebody to give them some attention, and they have nothing. I mean, I've never seen something like that in Coral Springs, and it hurts to watch. And I know that every teacher has to go through that year in and year out, feeling like it's uphill with administration because administration doesn't fight for teacher pay. The union doesn't, the union fights in contracts, right? But there's no broad appeal to teacher pay. There's a there's a principals and assistant principals kind of union. Where are they? Why aren't these principals? This is the one that always gets me. Why aren't principals, who almost all of which were former educators, arguing the loudest for teacher pay? Because they won't disrupt anything, right? And I just think you need that at some level. You need someone that's willing to disrupt, that's willing to call attention to injustice, come what may. And not everybody's in that position where they can handle the fallout. And I think for the few of us that are, we have a responsibility.
Absolutely. You speaking of getting involved, something I saw on your site that I was just like, I thought was so brilliant. In May, you kind of had this proposition to promote local government participation, to join with the 9 county commissioners in Broward for a petition response initiative, 2,000 resident signatures on any topic within 45 days. Can somebody tell me why that post had like 2 likes? Because this is what blows my mind, because that's freaking brilliant.
I'll say 2 things to that. The first is what motivated that, and this is going to sound very politicky, but what motivated that was I actually propositioned the incumbent a while back, and I said, I'm going to go meet with 3,000 residents in our district, and I'm going to get the top 3 or 4 issues, and I'm going to deliver those up to you. And if you do them, I will drop out of the race, and I will back you. And, he sort of laughed this off. You know what I mean? His campaign manager at the time kind of laughed this off, and they said, and they didn't care. And I said, no, these are important to these people, because you should hear the kinds of, when you're running for office, the kinds of things that people want. They're real life issues. I mean, I can't tell you how many times someone knocked on my door, because I'm very public about where I live. Someone's knocked on my door and said, I have a problem with the duck poop. There's a guy on the 2nd floor over there. He's throwing bread to the ducks, but he doesn't care that they then poop all in my walkway. And they get, and these are real issues. And you laugh for a minute, and then you say, this is what matters. So first I say, why don't you go run for the homeowners association, and let's stop that from happening. And then let's focus on the bigger issue. And then they say they don't have time. And then I end up on the homeowners association fighting for that issue as well. Right. But we went to him, and we knew he wasn't going to do anything because he said it. And so we said, we want a way to do this. And, the things that get me are like when the White House talks, I'm sorry, I don't know Star Wars too well, but when the White House addresses like some hundreds of thousands of petitions for something with, something to do with Star Wars or something like that, because it's a rule that they have to respond. And I'm like, these people are fighting for real things right here. And nobody's responsive to this. And that post actually got a lot of support from the commissioners. The problem is they often say they support you so that you forget about it. And before you know it, it's 3 months down the road and you have no traction on this very simple thing. So I guess I'd say it was 2 parts. Partly it was designed to increase awareness for who your elected officials are, and then to force their responses on issues that actually matter. And 2 things that I think somehow they've evaded successfully over the course of a few decades. So we believe that one will, in fact, get brought up. They're on, I hate to say this and make it sound like they don't do anything, because some of them do, but they don't work in the summer. Now, some of them do some other things in the summer, but on their $100,000 salaries for their 20 meetings a year, they have their 2-month break, of course, for summer recess, because, why would they work in the summer when people could actually potentially attend a meeting and give some feedback? So we want to recognize how important it is that people making 6 figures and only working less than 1 or 2 meetings a month for a whole year get to stay out of the limelight. But we think after summer recess, this in fact will get brought up, and we have a good deal of confidence that at least 2 commissioners will raise this issue. They were very, very supportive in theory. We'll see how they are in practice. But I appreciate it. That's actually something that's very, very important to us, because whether I win or not, I want to make sure that when somebody says, hey, we want to hear what Broward County is doing or isn't doing or can't do, they need to know they have that recourse. And one of them is like the ICE deportation facility. I've been calling that out for 2 years. Now, we have protesters on the ground calling it out, but I'm calling it out from a political standpoint, saying, let's create a study committee, figure out how to come off of the federal funding, because they get the federal contract for that thing, where it's not really benefiting Broward County at all, but it is in my district. So I want to close that ICE deportation facility. And I know that means finding a way to supplement the money that the government is getting, which is a marginal amount of money, all things considered. So I said, this is very doable. But we have all these people protesting in the streets, right? Then you have the separation of the families, which is another issue entirely. But you have the people protesting in the streets. They can't get a county official to even say a word about this, right? You can't do it. So you don't even know where your county official stands, and that's just not going to fly anymore, right? I want to know where my elected official is on this issue, and I don't want to know what he believes. I want to know what he's doing, And if you're in another district in Broward County, I want to know what she's doing, But I want to know my elected official is doing something. It's not enough to miss some of your meetings, go to one of them, maybe go to two of them, say your piece, support a resolution, and I can't get you on the ground with, petitions to get a direct initiative or a referendum on a ballot. So I think that's just an important part of government transparency. And there's a lot more that we need to do, but I think that's just kind of a baseline.
Yeah, right on. We definitely, something I've been talking about the past few days, especially, we need people to be more active. We have 20 more primaries, and everyone's so distracted with like tabloid crap right now. And we have 20 more primaries. And then in November, we have, the general. And 2 years ago, everyone was like, oh, blue wave, and we're going to get all these Bernie-crats elected. And then you have California coming out in 21%. And it's just like, okay, wait, like, where'd this momentum go? So, yeah, we definitely need people to, like, concentrate, because a lot of people talk about 2020, but we're not going to have a good election in 2020 unless we get progressives in there now. But anyway, you do also talk about the affordable housing. So do you know what the like homeless population is in your district?
Yeah, so there's a few ways that they try to measure this. One of them is how many homeless people seem to be registered at certain locations. Now, I think most of us know, who are sort of on the ground and seeing this situation, that doesn't give sort of the full picture of just how many people there are. The county estimates they have a sort of initiative that looks at this issue. They estimate that about $12 million could house the homeless population about which we know. I think those estimates might be on the lower side, but either way, I mean, we have a nearly $5 billion budget that will only increase due to property taxes being like 9-10% this year. So we'll bring in even more money. We have fairly low sales tax, but my point is there's money. And when I see things like the sheriff taking pictures of some elaborately painted Dodge Charger or whatever that car is, and it's like he's got all these expensive designs on it, and he's like showcasing it. And I'm saying, like, that's a line item in a budget. You know what I mean? Like, who's approving this stuff? You know what I mean? Like, I just, when we know that $12 million potentially brings all homeless people off the streets, why isn't that, like, why aren't we starting at that, like doing a sort of, like a zero-based budget, right? So where you say, you justify to me your expenses, and then we'll look at, where the money's going. I want to see homelessness at the front. I want to see deliberate efforts to affect criminal justice reform, sentencing reform, things we know about, like people sitting in jails with bail prices that are at $20, and we're paying thousands and thousands of dollars per night. And we go, just on an economic level, this is wrong, right? This doesn't work financially. I wish they had a much deeper issue with it, but at least on a financial scale, you should say, okay, hey, it makes more sense for us to invest our resources in housing the homeless. And some people are doing some amazing things. You look at Housing First, what they're doing. And then, of course, there's the little things that everybody knows about, right? They know about inclusionary zoning. They know about tax incentives. There's some interesting ones, too, that I always look at, like new development, them putting solar on everything to save money because you get, a tax benefit for using these types of things that are energy independent. And then using that savings back and applying it to, the people that need it the most. So, the population set varies, but roughly they've measured it in terms of cost, and they've said around $11+ million, just under 12. And with city help, I think that's doable, but I can tell you it's doable on the county level. Because when we go in, one of the first things we're doing is we are auditing everyone's budget. Every sector, every line item, we are just going to go through and we are going to put that to the public and say, did you want this? Did you want that? Because they want to perpetuate this notion that the second you start reallocating funding, you're sort of depriving essential services of the resources they need. And the reality is nobody even knows what the essential resources are. So I want to get people on the record telling me, no, we need to, paint that car 6 different metallic colors because that just helps the community. And then after I'm done laughing at them and telling them no, I tell them to go pound sand because that's not where our money's going. Like our money's not going for you to dress up a car. Our money's going to the families and individuals who are living on the streets. And I want to meet the person that says that's a bad idea. I do. I'd love to take them out for a coffee and say, help me understand, because I can at this point.
Yeah, right on. I feel like we could talk for 2 more hours. You're an awesome guest. I see comments in here. Definitely, people are feeling you. If you want to leave our viewers with something so that they recommend you or throw a few dollar donation, share this show, what do you want to leave people with?
That's a great question.
Everyone always says that, and then they're like, huh.
Can answer that with maybe 2 or 3 things that I think people could do if they were willing. I think the first thing is, we got word a couple days ago that a dear friend and progressive activist in Broward County had some surgical complications, and it was very strange. And before we knew it, I got the text that he was on a ventilator. And he's still down at Pembroke Pines on a ventilator. And he does a radio show. He's an amazing guy, Brian Stetton. So the first thing I would say is, like, do what you can to identify those people in the community that are raising awareness of the issues, right? Try to find out what they are, because they're doing incredible work. And most of the time, they're not even getting anything for it in terms of pay. It's sort of like a labor of love. And I would ask, your viewers to kind of find those people out in your areas and just see how you could support them by sharing their stuff. Because, they're putting time into these shows, they're putting work and research. And so I would just say that there are the Brian Stettons everywhere. They're everywhere. And independent journalism, independent news is probably the best things people could be getting behind right now. So I would encourage them to do that. And another thing I would say is find a way to support anybody that wants a politics of compassion, right? Anybody, forget all of the buzzwords and the language out there of this person's doing this thing. Don't get bogged down in like this little policy detail or whatever it is. Find candidates you can get behind and do anything you can. And I probably spend more time trying to promote other candidates on the off chance that I lose, because I think that's what we need to do as a people, is just generally support humanity, and especially those people that have an eye towards human compassion and suffering. And so if you find people that are doing good work out there, get behind them. Just find a way to get behind them. I hope that you could substitute any individual in my campaign, and they could go keep it going. I don't care who it is. So I'm just one person calling out in the wilderness right now. We're going to try to break through, but I really think it's critical for candidates to work at raising the sort of collective platform of all other candidates. So if you have a good social media account or people like your stuff a lot, share someone else's stuff. I would say do that. And I'm not the shameless plug kind of person. I understand that's how you people make a name for themselves and they get out there. And so I'd say if someone knows better ways that I can serve Broward County, go check out the website, rrbroward.com, and send me an email and help me develop better platforms. Help me develop ways that are more accessible and responsive to the local community. Critique me on bad ideas. That's what we need. And because when you have a solid platform, I think there's a type of enthusiasm you can get behind that, right? You know that, like, hey, I've worked through this idea. I know it can be done and it can be executed. So if you could do that, it would mean the world to me. But I'm just grateful to be in a race where I know we can affect some change. And if enough people get behind it, we're going to do it. So sure, any politician or candidate will tell you money helps, but money means very little if you don't have people behind you that believe in what you're doing. And I never thought I was going to do this for the money. It's why we went in saying 50% of the salary right off the bat is going to go to whatever the community decides after tuition-free college, because we wanted to make sure that students had a pipeline, to sort of get out of poverty and get out of the situations they're in and support their families. And so after that issue, we knew we would meet that in the first year. And then we said 50% of the salary every year afterward that I'm in office is going to go to the number one issue that the community supports. And we're going to put that to the community. So I'm grateful. I'm happy to be here and do this. And I hope that a lot of people get behind others that are doing it too. But yeah, I'd say check out the website and help out where you can. And we knew that a lot of people weren't going to have a lot of money in this, and we weren't going to go out there trying to ask everybody for money every chance we get. That we're at a critical point now where mailers, things like that can help. If someone has, someone's good at something, if you're good at making a palm card, I'll pay for it. Just help me make it. I'm not a graphic design person. Those kinds of things, right? I say, so do what you can to support who you can, and I don't know. I'm really grateful for your show and for your voice and the work that you guys are doing. I couldn't be happier to be in a race like this. It's the kind of thing you can lose with dignity.
Yeah, right on. You're just awesome. I'm so glad I had you on. And we have Laura Rossi, who's freaking awesome.
Yes.
She said she is ready to phone bank. So
it means the world to us. I can tell you, for us, phone banking or knocking on doors in about 2 weeks is going to be key. We're out there every day knocking on doors. It's hot out. Anybody from Florida knows, but it's worth it. It's worth it to brave the weather because we're meeting some incredible people, and they haven't had choices before. So what we want to do is say, we're not discouraged by someone voting for my opponent. What we want to do is just really kind of give a nod to the democratic process and say, hey, we want your voice represented, and we hope that's with us. But if not, I hope they come to us afterwards and tell us how we can help.
Awesome. Yes, guys, if you know people in Broward County or live there yourself, definitely send them the show. Also, we have to get out and vote. This looks like Florida's primary is August 28th. So definitely get out, research your area. We can't do this 21% stuff because it's just not cutting it. And thank you guys to everyone in here who's giving props and going to check out his website. Friday, I have a gentleman named Gary Rosinski. I think that's how you say his last name. and he is running against everyone's favorite neo-lib ginger Joe Kennedy. So that should be a good show. This guy is actually a scientist. So he's running on like a very green platform. And then Monday, I have Miss Tambourine Borelli back from Washington State. So I have some good candidates coming up. So anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. Again, thank you, Ryan. Best of luck with everything. You are awesome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Absolutely. Take care.